From folklore and fairies
to monsters and mysteries, it came from the Maritimes.
He has such sights to show you. My co-host, Evan.
Through the Looking Glass, my co-host, Chelsea.
Hi everyone, welcome back to It Came From The Maritimes, an Atlantic Canada folklore podcast. Today, we're revisiting one of our most listened to topics, fairies. This time, we'll be sharing tales of the wee folk from the wonderful province of Prince Edward Island. PEI is a stunning province known for its beautiful beaches, charming towns, and potatoes. Just kidding with that last one, kind of. PEI is also known for the famous series Anne of Green Gables, written by Canadian author Lucy Maud Montgomery. Evan, do you remember my Anne of Green Gables wig hat I wore around as a child?
I do. I think it's probably still in a costume box in the cupboard under the stairs at our mom's house.
I'm confident it is. I honestly looked ridiculous because it was a straw hat with red yarn braids attached that I would wear just hanging over my dark brown hair. But I loved it.
Oh, it's fun.
Now, the reason I bring up Lucy Maud Montgomery is because I love this quote from one of her books, The Story Girl, and I feel it just sets the tone for this episode. There is such a place as fairyland, but only children can find the way to it, and they do not know that it is fairyland until they have grown so old that they forget the way. One bitter day, when they seek it and cannot find it, they realize what they have lost, and that is the tragedy of life. On the day the gates of Eden are shut behind them, and the age of gold is over, henceforth they must dwell in the common light of common day. Only a few, who remain children at heart, can ever find that fair, lost path again, and blessed are they above the mortals. They, and only they, can bring us tidings from that dear country where we once sojourned, and from which we must evermore be exiles. The world calls them its singers, and poets, and artists, and storytellers. But they are just the people who have never forgotten the way to fairyland. Just sets a magical mood, doesn't it?
It really does. That's really nice.
Thank you. So let's dive into the magical topic of today's episode, the fairies of Prince Edward Island. The tales of the wee folk on the island go back centuries, when the Mi'kmaq first paddled to what they called Abagwit, which translates to cradled upon the waves, or Minigu, which simply translates to the island. This tale was shared in Frank Harold MacArthur's book, Legends of Prince Edward Island. When the Mi'kmaq first landed on the shores of the island, they met a race of small people with extraordinary abilities. These little people were called the Tweedlers. The Tweedlers and the Mi'kmaq people did not have an easy relationship, and the Tweedlers would steal Mi'kmaq women and children who strayed too far from their homes at night. War was declared when the Tweedlers kidnapped the Mi'kmaq chief's son. A battle ensued at the Tweedlers' homestead called Pretty Stream, a wooded area now called Kellow's Hollow in the town of Cornwall. The fight bore on for 3 days until only a few remained standing, and the stream ran red with the blood of the fallen. The few Tweedlers who survived were set adrift in the ocean as punishment for their crimes. Ever since this battle, Kellow's Hollow is thought to have a mystical quality. People say it's as if the blood of the fallen Tweedlers imbued the surroundings with preternatural qualities, the ones that these wee people were known to possess. Even though the Tweedlers were thought to have all been destroyed, some folks to this very day will still say that they spot the little people flitting through the trees, and that they live hidden in coves and dense forests across the province. Now, I would just like to give myself props, and I mean no disrespect to the wee folks, but I just had to say Tweedlers about 10 times without cracking a laugh, and I think I did very good.
I was going to say, when you introduced them as Tweedlers, I did not expect it to end in a bloody battle.
No, me neither.
I was kind of like, Tweedlers, this is going to be fun and cute. And then it's like, the river ran red with their blood. And it's like, okay.
But it's quite a common story. Like, it's quite well known.
Jeez.
It's one of the most common stories of fairies in Prince Edward Island I was able to find.
Well, there you go.
Our next story is a little less morbid. Actually, a lot less morbid. I don't think anything is ever going to be quite as morbid as the story of the Tweedlers was.
Fair.
Our next tale takes us to Cape Wolfe, which sits on the western shore of Prince Edward Island. In the 1700s, a man named John French and his mistress named Janet Daisy settled in Cape Wolfe shortly after the British colonized the area. Their only neighbors were an Acadian family who lived in an old cabin about 1 kilometer up the coast. Sadly, the family passed away from an unknown disease, so their cabin sat empty and rotting in the years to come, leaving John and Janet without any neighbors nearby. 2 nights each year, on May's Eve and Halloween, the cabin seemed to come to life. The broken windows would glow with a warm light, and twinkling music would spill from the cracks in the old wooden walls. According to Celtic beliefs, those nights were thought to be times of fairy celebrations, so John and Janet believed that the wee folk were using the cabin for their celebratory gala. Janet believed in the old folklore, so she knew to not interfere with the little people. John, however, was enchanted by the idea of leaving behind his responsibilities and living a whimsical life with the fairies. One Halloween night, John stormed out of the house after an argument with Janet, and he started walking up the coast to clear his mind. As he neared the abandoned cabin, he heard the sounds of a party within. He was enticed by the pitter-patter of dancing feet and the ethereal music. He couldn't resist joining in the festivities. John entered the cabin and joined a crowd of wee folk dancing. They allowed him to join them and even offered him a thimble full of nectar before welcoming him to the dance floor. John danced and danced, reveling in the merry flute and fiddle music the little people played. He didn't leave the party until the early dawn hours. He practically skipped home, he had had such a good time. He had enjoyed himself so much that he didn't notice a change overcome him during the festivities. It wasn't until he reached his front door and had to reach way up to grab the door handle that he realized he had shrunk. He took this change in stride. He passed his well wishes for the future on to Janet and ran away to fulfill his dream to join the fairies.
I didn't even know what to make of that one. I mean, as soon as you said that he was offered food, I was like, I know that you don't take food from fairies, especially if you go to their land, but like,
right?
I just say like, and you don't party with the fairies, but you're just kind of like, bye wife, I'm just gonna go hang with the fairies. Especially imagining like going from a regular side, just like a little miniature version being like, I'm going to the fairies, bye.
At that point, I'd be like, good riddance, John.
I mean, honestly.
Right? Like, I'll live here alone.
Fair.
Now we have one last tale of the fairies of Prince Edward Island I'd like to share today. Now, if any of you happen to know any other stories, we'd always love to learn more folklore, so please send them our way. We're always open to sharing more tales as we find them. But this one is the story of Roderick, who was a young man who lived in Prince Edward Island with his wife and family. He was a normal man by all accounts, except for the fact that he would disappear for long periods of time. One winter night, Roderick hosted a party, and as the night wore on, he realized he hadn't locked the barn, so he lit his lantern and went outside to check. Everyone was having a blast, so an hour flew by before people even realized that Roderick hadn't returned. The crowd went out to investigate and got nervous when they found his lantern on the ground, because he was nowhere to be found. Luckily, it had snowed earlier in the evening, so they were able to find his footsteps leading into the field behind the barn. They were surprised when the footsteps became farther apart. It was almost as if he had started running. But soon they became so spread out that it appeared he must have taken leaps and bounds outside the realm of what a normal human could. The footsteps led all the way to a fence, and the snow was disturbed on top of the fence as if someone had jumped over it. But from that point forward, they couldn't find any evidence of where he might have gone, so they returned to the house to make a plan. Shortly after, Roderick burst through the door. He was soaking wet and covered in salt. His hair was hanging over his pale face. Once they got over the shock of his disheveled appearance, someone asked where he had gone. He was distraught and told his friends that 2 fairies had grabbed him when he went outside, and they carried him across the Atlantic Ocean to a foreign country. He begged and pleaded for them to bring him home, but they dunked him in and out of the Atlantic Ocean until he agreed that he would join them on an adventure any time the whim struck them to bring him along. He was plagued by the wee folks for the remainders of his days, but now, any time Roger disappeared, his friends knew not to ask. You see, they feared that they would bring the attention of the fairies to themselves.
I gotta say, these PEI fairies seem pretty nefarious.
They are. I feel like in the tales of the fairies of Cape Breton we shared last year, they were just braiding horses' hairs and riding them at night. They weren't dunking folks in the ocean in winter.
Well, that's the thing, is like, it seems like it was a lot more like mischievous, but then the PEI ones are just like, they're out to get you.
They are. Next time you visit PEI, you better watch out.
Exactly.
As you all know, or at least our regular listeners do, we like to end our episodes with a bit of a segment. So today I'm going to be quizzing Evan on a few different types of fairies to see if he can guess what type of fairy it is. Our first one is an industrious fairy who lives in homes, working tirelessly at night to clean in exchange for gifts of cream and milk.
Is that a brownie?
Yes.
Because that's like in the Girl Guides, like brownies. They're supposed to be those brownies, right? Not like just a baked good.
Yes, it's meant to be like the little fairies.
Okay. Yeah.
When I was in brownies, we had a super flattering outfit of brown pants and an orange and brown striped t-shirt.
That's a look.
It was. It felt a little Charlie Brownish, but now our next one is very relevant to our childhood, or at least my childhood. A mischievous, malicious creature that I was afraid of as a child, who live in dark spaces and attach themselves to households, terrorizing those within.
I'm not sure if this is even a fairy or like a folklore, like a puka?
It's a goblin.
Okay. Yeah, goblin. That makes sense.
Now, our third one is a more pleasant creature with a cute little name that has also been attributed to a form of Halloween candy. It's a tiny, dainty spirit who loves to dance, but will lead travelers astray for their own amusement.
Sounds like me. Tiny, dainty.
Leading people astray.
You said shares the name of a Halloween candy?
Yeah.
Huh.
A stick-formed candy.
Pixie.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, I didn't really get that on my... I was thinking Sprite, and then you said candy, and I was like, no, that's a soft drink.
That's why I threw in the little bonus tip.
Thank you.
You're so welcome. Well, that's our little fairy quiz. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of It Came From The Maritimes. You can find us on social media, on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at It Came From The Maritimes, where we share some behind-the-scene photos and just updates on our episodes. You can find us on X and Blue Sky at ICFT Maritimes. If you have any Atlantic Canada folklore you would like to see covered in future episodes, or any spooky encounters of your own, email us at itcamefromthemaritimes@gmail.com. And please, if you enjoy our podcast, please feel free to leave us a 5-star rating and review to help other folks find us. So we end each episode with a folklore tip, just a fun East Coast superstition that we found in our reading. So Evan, what's our folklore tip for today?
I don't know if this is a tip so much as just a statement, but it's that thunder makes milk sour.
Well, I wouldn't be leaving sour milk out as an offering for the fairies.
No, I wouldn't either.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Especially not those Prince Edward Island ones.